Chapter 1. The New York Hustle, 1998. The humidity in Queens was a thick, suffocating blanket that smelled of hot asphalt and desperation. Jake stood behind the plexiglass of Jake's corner store, watching the street through a layer of grime and old lottery posters. The store was dying. The shelves were stocked with dusty cans of knockoff soup and expired bread. "Fuck this," Jake muttered, slamming a stack of crates. 20 hours a day for pennies? Motherfucker, I'm done. The door chimes rattled, and walked Leo. He didn't look like the usual crackheads or corner boys. He wore a crisp tracksuit and moved with the slow, predatory confidence of a man who owned the sidewalk. Leo leaned against the counter, ignoring the no loitering sign. "Place looks like shit, Jake," Leo said, his voice a low rasp. "God damn! Man, you're drowning in here. You here to buy something or just talk shit, Leo?" Jake snapped, his hand drifting toward a heavy iron pipe under the register. Leo laughed, flashing a gold tooth. "I'm here to save your bitch-ass life. You're selling snacks to kids when you should be selling relief to the masses. Look at this." He tossed a small, heat-sealed bag on the counter. It wasn't a bag of brown-frown dirt weed. Inside were bright, neon-colored gummies that smelled like a skunk had died in a fruit factory. Ganja Goodies. "We make 'em in a lab out in Jersey. You put these in the back corner, tell the right people, and you'll be printing money by Friday." Jake looked at the bag, then at the empty register. The fear of the feds was real, but the fear of being broke was worse. "If the boys in blue catch a whiff of this, I'm cooked," Jake whispered. "Fuck them," Leo spat. "They're busy with the shooters. They ain't looking for candy. You want in, or you want to keep being a hoe-ass nigga selling stale bread." Chapter 2. The Viral Spark. The word spread like a virus through the 5 boroughs. It wasn't Instagram. This was 1998. It was pagers and payphones. The Candy Man in Queens became a legend. By the second week, the line for Jake's corner store wrapped around the block. Jake wasn't just a shopkeeper anymore. He was a gatekeeper. He hired his cousins Malik and Dre to stand by the door. Malik was 6'4" and didn't talk. He just moved people along. "Yo, let me get 5 of the red ones, man," a kid in a baggy FUBU jersey yelled, shoving a crumpled $100 bill through the slot. "Back the fuck up," Malik roared, his voice echoing off the brick tenements. "You wait your turn like everyone else, you little bitch, or you don't get shit." Inside, Jake was counting stacks. The money was filthy, literally. It smelled of sweat and street grime, but it was more than he'd seen in a lifetime. He felt the rush of power. He bought a new Lexus, a gold chain that felt like a literal weight on his neck, and a heavy-duty safe. But the success brought heat, not just from the law, but from the sharks. "We got eyes on us, Jake," Dre whispered one night as they locked up. A black SUV had been idling across the street for 3 hours. "The local crews don't like us taking their clientele. They think we're moving on their turf with this candy bullshit." "Let 'em watch," Jake said, though his heart hammered against his ribs. "We're the kings of this block now. Anyone tries to take a bite out of my plate is going to lose their fucking teeth." Chapter 3. Blood on the Linoleum. The peace didn't last. On a Tuesday night, 3 masked men burst through the door with sawed-off shotguns. They didn't want to register. They wanted the goodies and the safe. "Drop it, motherfucker." "Open the safe," the lead jumper screamed, his eyes wide and wild behind a ski mask. Malik didn't hesitate. He dived over the counter, tackling the first man. A blast went off, shattering the plexiglass into a million jagged diamonds. Jake ducked, his ears ringing, the smell of gunpowder filling his lungs. He reached for the 9mm he'd tucked into the small of his back. "Fuck you," Jake screamed, popping up and emptying the clip. The store became a slaughterhouse. Blood sprayed across the candy displays, staining the Ganja Goodies labels a deep, dark crimson. When the smoke cleared, 2 of the intruders were motionless on the floor. Malik was clutching his shoulder, his teeth gritted in agony. "You okay?" Jake gasped, his hand shaking so hard he dropped the gun. "I'm gonna kill every one of these hoe-ass niggas," Malik hissed, blood leaking through his fingers. Jake looked at his store. The dream was turning into a nightmare. He realized then that New York was too small. The heat was too high. He needed to go where the grass was greener, literally. He looked at the map. California was calling. Chapter 4, the California Pivot. They packed a Lexus in a U-Haul, leaving the bloodstained store behind for the NYPD to find. They drove across the country, the air getting drier and the laws getting blurrier. In 1998, California was the Wild West of medical marijuana. "Look at this place," Dre said as they rolled into Los Angeles. "Sun, palm trees, and bitches everywhere. Why the fuck were we in Queens?" They set up a warehouse in the valley. Leo had connections out west, growers who were crossbreeding plants into monsters. Jake saw the potential. This wasn't just about candy anymore. It was about the source. They started a massive indoor grow operation hidden behind the facade of a commercial laundry business. "We do this right. We never have to look back," Jake told his crew. "We're the bridge. NYC grit with Cali gold." But the violence followed them. The local gangs in LA weren't like the crews in Queens. They were organized, paramilitary, and they didn't like New Yorkers coming in and undercutting their prices. Jake found himself in the middle of a turf war he wasn't prepared for. One night, they found Leo's car in the parking lot. Leo was still inside, but he wasn't breathing. A note was pinned to his chest. "California is for Californians." "Goddamn," Jake whispered, staring at his friend's cold face. "They think they can scare us? They don't know where we come from." Chapter 5, the raid in the fall. The escalation was swift. Jake didn't play defense. He went on the offensive. They hit back hard, turning the streets of North Hollywood into a war zone. But the noise was too loud. You can't have shootouts in the valley without the feds taking notice. It happened at 4 a.m. "FBI, open the fuck up." The flashbangs blinded them. Jake was tackled before he could even reach for his weapon. Face down on the cold concrete, he felt the heavy boots on his neck and the zip ties cutting into his wrists. "Jake Harrison," a voice boomed. "You're under arrest for interstate trafficking, racketeering, and a laundry list of violent crimes. You're done, kid." As they let him out in chains, Jake saw his empire being dismantled. Millions of dollars in product being tossed into incinerators. His cousins were in separate cars, their heads bowed. "You'll be old before you see the sun again, you piece of shit," the lead agent sneered. Jake didn't say a word. He looked at the rising sun over the San Fernando Valley and felt a strange sense of peace. He'd lived more in 3 years than most men did in 80. But the price was 27 years of his life. Chapter 6, the Iron Gates, 1999. The bus ride to USP Hazleton was a symphony of rattling chains and heavy silence. Jake sat shackled to a man who smelled like sour milk and old cigarettes. When the gates of the Federal Penitentiary slammed shut behind him, the sound was final. It was the sound of a life ending. "Strip, motherfucker," the guard barked. Jake stood naked in a cold room, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. They poked, prodded, and humiliated him, stripping away the last remnants of the Jake's Corner Store kingpin. He was no longer a man. He was registered number 44921-054. His cell was a concrete box. His cellmate was a mountain of man named Silas, a lifer with tattoos crawling up his neck. "You the candy man from Queens?" Silas asked, his voice like gravel. "I'm Jake," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Out here, you're prey or you're a predator," Silas said, leaning back. "The Italians want your head because of that mess in L.A., and the Aryan Brotherhood wants your money. Better find a side, ho-ass nigga, or you'll be carried out in a bag before lights out." Chapter 7, the long game. The first 5 years were about survival. Jake learned to move in the shadows of the yard. He used the money he'd hidden away, the rainy day fund he'd funneled to his cousins Malik and Dre, to buy protection and influence. He wasn't selling Ganja Goodies anymore. He was selling cigarettes, stamps, and information. "God damn, this place is a drain," Jake whispered to Malik during a glass partition visit in 2004. Malik looked different. Older, wearing a sharp suit. "The money is safe, Jake," Malik whispered back, his eyes darting to the guards. "We didn't spend it. We laundered it through legitimate real estate, like you told us. And the laws, they're changing, man. California, Just legalize medical. We're getting into the legal side. We're going to build a legacy for when you walk. Keep it clean, Jake warned. I don't want you in a cage next to me. If I'm doing this time, make it mean something. Don't let those bitch-ass vultures in Queens touch a cent. Chapter 8, The Shadow CO. By 2012, Jake was a shot caller in the feds. He didn't have to lift a finger. He spent his days in the law library, studying the shifting landscape of cannabis legalization. He watched on a grainy common room TV as state after state turned green. It was bittersweet. He was a pioneer who got slaughtered, while entrepreneurs in suits were now doing what he went to prison for. He sent coded instructions to his cousins through letters. Invest in the North End. Buy the warehouse on 5th. He was running a business from a bunk bed. One afternoon, a young inmate tried to check Jake in the chow hall, slamming a tray down. You think you're special because you've been here a decade? You're just another old head. Jake didn't even look up from his mashed potatoes. Son, I was moving weight when you were still pissing the bed. Move that tray before I make you eat it. When the kid reached for a shank, 3 of Jake's associates stepped out of the shadows. Sit down, ho, Silas growled. The kid vanished. Jake was untouchable, but his soul was turning to stone. Chapter 9, the final stretch, 2020 to 2024. The world outside was changing in ways Jake couldn't comprehend. Smartphones, social media, and a global pandemic. Through it all, he waited. His hair turned gray at the temples, and his face became a map of scars and hard lines. Malik's visits became the highlight of his existence. We got the licenses, Jake. 2 dispensaries. One in Brooklyn, one in West Hollywood. We named the brand High Profits. It's the biggest shit on the coast. And the feds? Jake asked, ever paranoid. All legal, cousin. We pay taxes now. Can you believe that shit? The government is our partner instead of our hunter. We kept the money you left. It's grown tenfold. You're coming home to a kingdom, not a corner store. The final year was the hardest. The short-timers fever set in. Every minute felt like an hour. Every chime of the guard's keys felt like a heartbeat. He stayed away from the drama, focused only on the gate. Chapter 10, The Walk, 2025. January 2025. The morning air was crisp and smelled of freedom. Jake stood at the release desk, trading his khaki jumpsuit for a pair of raw denim jeans and a fresh white tee Malik had sent. 44921-054, you're cleared, the guard said, handing him a plastic bag with his 1998 possessions, a dead pager, a gold chain, and a weathered wallet. You did your time. Don't let me see your face back here. You won't, Jake said, his voice cold. I own the state now. He walked through the final gate. The sun was blinding. Waiting there were 2 blacked-out SUVs. Malik and Dre stepped out, looking like titans of industry. Welcome back, King, Malik said, grinning. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick rubber-banded stack of $100 bills, at least 50,000. He tossed it to Jake like it was a pack of gum. That's just for the ride to the airport. Throw it on some bitch or a steak dinner. You earned it. Dre stepped up, tossing another stack of the same size. Now you can finally live life, motherfucker. The dispensaries are waiting. The empire's yours. Jake caught the cash, feeling the weight of it. He looked at his cousins, then back at the prison walls. He climbed into the SUV, the leather smelling a success. First stop, Jake said, a predatory smile finally returning to his face. I want to see the shop. Chapter 11, The Glass Palace. The SUV glided through the streets of West Hollywood like a shark through deep water. Jake stared out the window, his brain struggling to process the neon-soaked skyline of 2025. People were walking down the street scrolling on glass rectangles, oblivious to the world. Everything's different, man, Jake muttered, clutching the stacks of cash Malik had thrown him. God damn, it's like a movie. They pulled up to a sleek, minimalist building with a matte black exterior and a glowing green sign. High Profits. There were no bars on windows. No plexiglass. No iron pipes under the counter. This is it, Dre said, clicking his key fob. Our flagship. We call it the Vault. Inside, The air was chilled and smelled like high-grade terpenes and expensive cologne. Beautiful women in branded uniforms stood behind marble counters, displaying jars of flour that looked like they'd been grown on another planet. "Welcome back, boss," a girl said, smiling at Jake. Jake ran a hand over marble. "I went to the feds for selling bags in a bodega, and now you got a bitch in a suit selling it like it's jewelry? This world is a trip, motherfucker." Chapter 12. The Social Club of Queens. While Jake was touring his kingdom, a shadow was moving in the background. In a dim social club back in the park, Queens, an old man named Sal sat sipping espresso. He'd been the one who sent those shooters into Jake's store in '98. He'd lost a nephew in that shootout, and the Italians never forget. "He's out," a younger associate whispered, sliding a tablet across the table showing a paparazzi photo of Jake entering his dispensary. "Look at that hoe-ass nigga," Sal spat, his voice a dry rattle. "He thinks the statute of limitations on blood has run out because he did some federal time? He's got 2 dispensaries and a pocket full of my family's pride. What's the play, Don Sal?" "He's a legal man now," Sal said with crooked grin. "That makes him soft. He's got something to lose. We head to Cali. We don't just want his life, we want his brand. We want those high profits for ourselves." Chapter 13. The First Night Out. Malik took Jake to a penthouse overlooking the Sunset Strip. The fridge was stocked with top-shelf liquor, and the table was covered in the finest Wagyu steak. But Jake couldn't eat. He sat on the balcony, watching the lights, the weight of the stacks of cash still in his pockets. "You're quiet, Jake," Malik said, stepping out with a joint. "Relax, man. You're home." "I'm waiting for floor to drop." "Malik, you don't just walk out of the hell I was in and land in a palace. It don't work like that." "It does when you have family who stayed loyal," Malik countered. "We didn't just keep the money, we fought for it. We had to crack skulls to keep this brand alive while you were away. You think we got these licenses being nice? Fuck no. We're still those niggas from the corner. We just wear better shoes now." Jake took the joint, inhaling deeply. The potency hit him like a freight train. "Fuck," he coughed. "What is this?" "That's Prison Break, our top-shelf strain." Dre laughed, walking out. "We named it after you, you crazy motherfucker." Chapter 14. The Shake-Up. The next morning, the high-profit location in Brooklyn was firebombed. No one was killed, but the message was clear. Malik's phone buzzed with a video of the wreckage. "Motherfucker." Malik screamed, throwing his phone against the wall. "Brooklyn is burning. They hit us at 3 a.m. Jake stood up, the old fire returning to his eyes. The old head from the yard was gone. The general was back. "Who still hates us that much?" "It's Sal," Dre said, his face pale. "The old regime. They think since you're out, it's time to collect interest on the blood you spilled in '98. Jake walked over to a safe in the wall. Malik punched in the code, revealing not just cash, but a row of suppressed pistols and body armor. "They think I'm soft because I'm in a penthouse?" Jake hissed, checking the slide on a blacked-out Glock. "They think I'm some bitch-ass businessman now? I survived 27 years in a cage with the worst monsters on Earth. Sal wants to see the 1998 Jake. I'll show him a version that'll make him wish he died of old age." Chapter 15. The New York Flight. "Pack the bags," Jake ordered. "We're going back to New York. If they want to burn my shop, I'm going to burn their whole neighborhood." "Jake, you're on federal parole," Dre warned. "If you get caught with a gun or even a fight, you're going back for the rest of your life. This is what they want." "I did my time." Jake roared, his voice shaking the windows. "I sat in that cell for nearly 3 decades while they lived their lives. I ain't letting no hoe-ass nigga take what I bled for. We're going to Queens, and we're going to end this." They boarded a private jet, the same way they left in '98, with a plan and a lot of heat. But this time, they had the resources of a multi-million-dollar empire behind them. As the plane leveled off at 30,000 feet, Jake looked at the stack of cash on the seat next to him. He realized that the money wasn't just for living life. It was for funding a war. "Welcome to the new era," Jake whispered to the clouds. "High profits, higher body counts." Chapter 16. Concrete Jungle Homecoming. The private jet touched down at Teterboro, and the air hit Jake like a physical blow. It was cold, gray, and tasted like exhaust, the smell of New York. They didn't take a limo. They took 3 armored black Suburbans. Jake sat in the back, his fingers tracing the grip of a customized .45. The feds think I'm at a wellness retreat in Sedona, Jake said, staring at the Manhattan skyline. Make sure the GPS on my phone stays in Arizona. If I'm going back to the cage, it's going to be for something worth it. We got the safe house in Long Island City ready, Malik said, checking his own heat. Our guys from the Brooklyn shop are strapped and waiting. They're young, Jake. They don't know the '98 war, but they know how to follow a check. I don't need kids who want to be famous on the internet, Jake spat. I need killers. Call those brothers I looked out for in Hazleton, the ones who got out last year. Tell them the Candy Man is back and the payroll is open. Chapter 17, The Message. Jake didn't go for Sal first. He went for Sal's pockets. Sal ran a series of illegal gambling dens and legit construction fronts across Queens. At 2 a.m., Jake's crew hit 3 of them simultaneously. They didn't just rob the places. They decimated them. Jake walked into the main social club in Ozone Park, the same one Sal had sat in days before. He didn't wear a mask. He wanted them to see the ghost. Where's the old man? Jake asked, stepping over a groaning bodyguard. Fuck you, Jake, the man wheezed. Jake didn't hesitate. He brought the butt of his gun down on the man's face, a sickening crunch echoing in the empty room. God damn, I miss that sound, Jake whispered. He took a gallon of gasoline from Malik and began dousing the velvet chairs and the card tables. Tell Sal that high profits is a fire-breathing bitch, Jake said, tossing a gold-plated lighter onto the floor. As the building erupted in flames, Jake walked out slowly. The heat at his back felt like a baptism. Chapter 18, The Snitch in the Circle. The retaliation was immediate. A drive-by at the safe house left 2 of Jake's new recruits dead and Dre with a graze on his temple. How the fuck did they find us? Dre yelled, pressing a bloody rag to his head. Nobody knew about this spot but the inner circle. Jake looked around the room. His eyes landed on a young kid named CJ, a cousin of a cousin who'd been handling the digital side of the business. CJ was shaking, his eyes darting toward the door. Jake walked over, his movement slow and predatory. CJ, you look like you've seen a ghost, motherfucker. I didn't say nothing, Jake. I swear on my mother. Jake grabbed the kid by the throat, slamming him against the wall. You hoe-ass nigga. You thought the Italians would give you a seat at the table? They used you like a condom. He reached into CJ's pocket and pulled out a burner phone. The last dial was to a 718 number. Jake, don't. Malik shouted. He sold us out for pennies, Jake said, his voice terrifyingly calm. He didn't shoot him. He turned to Malik. Take him to the docks. Let him see if he can swim with all that guilt in his pockets. Chapter 19, The Meeting of Kings. Sal realized Jake wasn't the soft businessman he'd imagined. The old man called for a sit-down at a neutral warehouse in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Jake arrived with an army. He had snipers on the roofs, men he'd served time with, guys who owed him their lives. He walked into the warehouse alone, his hands in his pockets. Sal sat at a folding table, looking every bit of his 80 years. You're a hard man to kill, Jake, Sal said, coughing into a handkerchief. You're a hard man to teach, Sal, Jake replied, pulling up a chair. You burned my shop. You tried to kill my family. In '98, I would have just shot you, but in 2025, I'm going to take everything you have. You have no respect for the old ways, Sal sneered. You think your weed money makes you a king? You're just a nigga with a brand. That brand is worth $100 million, you old bitch. Jake leaned in, his eyes cold as ice. I already bought your debt from banks. I own your social club. I own your house. I own the dirt you're going to be buried in. You're broke, Sal. You just don't know it yet. Chapter 20, The Final Toll. Sal pulled a hidden derringer from under the table, but Jake was faster. He didn't even use his gun. He grabbed Sal's wrist, snapping it like a dry twig. The old man screamed, a high-pitched sound that died in the vast warehouse. The game changed while I was in the box. Sal, Jake whispered in his ear. Violence is for the desperate. Power is for the patient. But since you like the old ways so much, Jake signaled his men. They brought in the bags, not drugs, but the charred remains of Sal's empire. I'm leaving you alive, Jake said. Standing up, I want you to watch me turn your neighborhood into one big, high-profits dispensary. Every time you walk down the street, you're going to smell my success. As Jake walked out, Malik and Dre were waiting. Is it over? Malik asked. For him, yeah. Jake said, looking at the New York sunrise. But for us, we're just getting started. We got a coast-to-coast empire to run, and I've got 27 years of living to make up for. He pulled out the stack of cash his cousin had given him on day one. He tossed a $100 bill to a homeless vet sitting by the gate. Enjoy yourself, old man, Jake said with a grin. It's a brand new world. Chapter 21, The West Coast Victory Lap. The flight back to Los Angeles was different. The tension that had lived in Jake's shoulders since 1998 finally began to dissolve. He sat in the plush leather seat of the private jet, a glass of expensive bourbon in one hand and a thick cigar in the other. We did it, Jake, Malik said, scrolling through a tablet. Sal's assets are being liquidated. The news is calling it a strategic acquisition by high profits. They don't have a clue about the blood in the streets. That's the beauty of 2025, Malik, Jake said, blowing a cloud of smoke toward the ceiling. You can be a warlord on Monday and a CEO on Tuesday as long as your paperwork is straight. Goddamn, it feels good to breathe. When they landed at LAX, there was no fear of handcuffs. Instead, a fleet of luxury cars waited on the tarmac. Jake stepped out, squinting against the California sun. He felt like a ghost who had finally found a body. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was reigning. Chapter 22, The Family Feast. To celebrate his official return and the expansion of the empire, Jake threw a massive private party at his estate in the Hollywood Hills. The guest list was a mix of the old guard, the survivors from the Queen's days, and the new elite. His cousin, Malik, walked up to him near the infinity pool. Jake, we got something for you. Dre joined them, carrying a heavy duffel bag. They stepped into the private study, away from the music and the smoke. Malik unzipped the bag. It was filled to the brim with vacuum-sealed stacks of cash, clean, non-sequential bills. This is a legacy fund, Dre said, his voice thick with emotion. We kept a percentage of every sale since the day you went in. We didn't touch it. Not for cars, not for bitches. This is your sweat and your blood, Jake. You did 27 years, so we could be free. Now it's time you enjoy yourself. Jake looked at the money, then at his family. You guys held it down. Most niggas would have folded or spent it all on jewelry. You're real ones. Chapter 23, The Modern Kingpin. The next morning, Jake visited his flagship dispensary one last time before the national launch. He stood in the center of the vault, watching the diverse crowd of customers. There were grandmothers looking for sleep aids, tech bros looking for a buzz, and kids who had no idea that men used to die for this plant. You thinking about the corner store? Leo's daughter, Maya, asked, stepping up beside him. She was ahead of his marketing now. A brilliant woman who had her father's eyes. Every day, Jake admitted, I think about how many lives were wasted for something that's now sold in a gift bag. It's a trip, Maya. The world moved on, but it left a lot of bodies behind. You changed the game, Jake, she said, handing him a tablet. Look at the numbers. We're projected to hit $1 billion valuation by Q3. You're not a drug dealer. You're an icon. Jake looked at the screen. He saw his face on a Forbes list. He saw the high profits logo on billboards across the country. He realized that his time in the feds hadn't just been a punishment. It had been an incubation period. He was the only one with the grit of the old world and the capital of the new. Chapter 24, Forgiving the Name. Before the grand opening of the national franchise, Jake took a solo trip back to a small cemetery in a quiet corner of L.A. He stood before a simple headstone. Leo, a visionary. I finished it, Leo, Jake whispered, placing a pack of Ganja Goodies on the stone. The Goodies are in every state now. We took it all. Sal is a memory, and your daughter is running the show. I'm sorry I couldn't save you back in '98, but I made sure they'll never forget your name." He stood there for a long time, the wind rustling the palm trees. For the first time, the ho-ass nigga voices of the past, the insults, the threats, the sounds of sirens, faded away. He wasn't a prisoner anymore. He wasn't a fugitive. He was a man who had paid his debt in full. Chapter 25, High Profits, the finale. The grand opening was a spectacle. Searchlights cut through the LA night sky. Jake stood on a stage in front of his newest, largest dispensary, surrounded by Malik, Dre, and a sea of cheering supporters. 27 years ago, Jake said into microphone, his voice booming across the crowd, "They told me I was a menace. They told me I was a criminal for selling a plant. They took my youth, they took my friends, and they tried to take my soul." The crowd went silent. But I'm standing here today to tell you that you can't lock up a vision. You can't cage a hustle. My family kept the fire burning while I was in the dark. Today, we don't just open a store. We open a new chapter for every brother and sister who was told they'd never be more than a statistic. Malik and Dre stepped forward, each holding a literal suitcase of cash. In front of the cameras, they tossed the money into the air, a shower of hundreds raining down on the front row. "Enjoy yourselves," Malik shouted. "The king is home." As the confetti and cash fell, Jake looked out at the horizon. He saw the lights of a city he now owned. He felt the weight of the gold chain on his neck, but it didn't feel like a burden anymore. It felt like a trophy. He leaned back, took a deep pull from a joint, and smiled. The Ganja Goodies had become an empire. The hustle was over. The life had finally begun.